Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels from HarperCollins. This week we're talking to James Hayman, formerly a creative director at one of New York's largest advertising agencies. He is the author of the acclaimed McCabe and Savage series, including The Cutting, The Chill of Night, Darkness First, and the new one, The Girl in the Glass from Harper Witness Impulse. I should mention, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/horror. They have over 180,000 titles for your device. So that's free audiobook at audibletrial.com/horror. Now, Mr. Hayman, formerly a creative director, now writing police thrillers that take place in the spooky, wooded, and funky areas of Portland, Maine. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. And I actually did read The Girl in the Glass over the last week, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Hopefully you enjoyed it.
I did. I very much did. And you're listed on the cover as a. I didn't even say this in the intro, but your books have been a USA Today bestsellers. That is tremendous. I know that's basically anybody, their goal in life is to go, wow, I have become a bestseller. Somebody out there said that I am one of the best in the nation.
That's the way I have always felt.
That was your goal.
That was my goal since birth.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. And I heard somebody once liken it to being like in the NBA versus being in the All-Stars. And so they're saying, I've never been a bestseller. And their kid goes, Mom, look, you made the NBA, do you have to be also...
It's okay that you're second string, Mom. You're in the NBA. You're on the court.
Exactly. And that's something, right? But yeah, you actually made it into the All-Star. So there we go. So this book actually is about, this is, I think, the fourth book, right, in the McCabe and Savage series.
This is the fourth book, yep.
Okay. So the book itself is about, you have the partners who star this series are a sergeant named McCabe and a detective named Maggie Savage. They are both very, very dedicated to their work. They love working murders. And when we find them, the sergeant is dealing with the fact that his teenage daughter is graduating from high school. His ex-wife or semi-ex-wife, his estranged wife, is going to pay for her college. And the book deals a lot.
She is his ex-wife, and she left him to marry a Wall Street zillionaire, which he has been pissed off about ever since.
Oh, right. But so he just got rid of yet another wife then. Okay.
But his girlfriend, his live-in girlfriend, just walked out on him because she didn't like the fact that he was a cop, and she wasn't sure whether he was going to come home or not after chasing a bad guy all day.
And one of my favorite elements of that is there's a point where she actually shows up and they're having a conversation. He's like, it doesn't have to be that way. I can shift my priorities around, but not just at this exact moment because there's an important phone call coming through on this murder that I'm working on. And it just sort of drives home that the girlfriend's damn right. He is utterly, completely obsessed and addicted, and he even says addicted to solving these murders. And the murder is an addiction for him,
and it has been in all the books, actually. We know that he is somebody who can't keep his hands or can't keep his mind from trying to solve a murder. It is an obsession for him.
Yes. But, I mean, so first of all, I wanted to mention what kind of murder it is, but that obsession, do you find it complicated, the fact that, in a way, we as the reader want this protagonist to be obsessed with solving murders, right? Because we want to solve it with him. But on the other hand, isn't there something sort of twisted about the fact that we want to watch this human being kind of destroy their lives? Because if this were an actual person, then clearly something's out of whack as far as like how they're going to handle this.
Oh, absolutely. This whole thing, this being torn between the woman he loves and the job that he can't stop doing, has been a major problem for him in all four books. And it's something that the job always seems to take precedence. McCabe when he knows there's a murder and he knows that the murderer has to be chased down and caught and punished, he's got to do it. He just has no choice. It is like an addiction.
Now, this particular murder, I'm trying to think, the way this one works out, I love the setting of it. I love the fact that it's a private island. You've got, you know, I don't want to give away too much, but very simply, you've got a perfect setting for a thriller like straight out of the 40s, really. A private island, you know, that is held by this extremely rich, snooty family that sort of lords over one of the wealthy areas of Portland, Maine, and they're having a graduation ceremony on the island, and the valedictorian of the class, who's also the most beautiful girl in the class and is perfect in every way, is murdered, and the situation of her murder is grisly. And I don't even you actually do give away on the cover of the book that the circumstances of her murder seem to eerily echo a murder that happened about 100 years ago.
No, it's a copycat murder. I mean, that is right up front. We know that if we just read the little blurbs on the book, you know that right away, that it's they were murdered in exactly the same way. And they looked exactly alike. They were physically identical. One was the great-great-granddaughter of the other. And
but we know that when we're reading the book, but it's actually a long time before the characters seem to notice it. Well, some of them know right away, but others, you know, other characters, you know, it takes a while for them to come across it. Anyway, now so here's my question. That's the basic concept. You've got a grisly murder of a beautiful girl belonging to a rich family on a private island, you know, and you've got this extremely large number of possible suspects going on. You have the addicted detective, and you have his sort of no-nonsense detective partner. The sergeant is addicted to it, and then his partner, who is Detective Maggie, she's very serious, and I liked her character a lot. And here's my question.
Okay.
Do you know, I mean, I want to know about your process in that, do you know who did it from the beginning? When you write a book like this, where you have the murder, you have the suspects, you have the details, do you use a spreadsheet? Do you know who did it to begin with and know when to sprinkle in clues? You know, or is a mystery the kind of thing that you can write sort of by the seat of your pants?
There are two deaths in this book, and one happened in 1904 and one happened in 2012. In neither case did I know who committed the murder until I was well into the book. I actually finished 2 or 3 drafts of the book before I decided who the real killer was. And that's not uncommon for me. The same thing happened in my first book. The guy who I had planned in the cutting to be the killer was too obvious, so I changed my mind and made somebody else the killer.
So you mean you actually wrote the scenes where the person's revealed, they turn out to be the one who did it, and then later you're rewriting the scenes and changing it into something else?
Yeah, I rewrite a lot. I don't do spreadsheets or outlines. My first book, I always read that authors, particularly authors of genre fiction, should create an outline before they started writing. So I followed the rules, and I created an outline, and I started writing after I had the outline. I started trying to follow the outline, and I realized by page probably 4 or 5 of 400 that I didn't really like following the outline. I felt it made the action wooden and not, spontaneous. It squeezed all the spontaneity out of the story, and so I just tried to get into my characters' heads. I do that in all my books. I try to get into my characters' heads, particularly McCabe's head, because he's sort of like me, and try to think, what is he feeling now? What is he going to do next? What are his the people he's trying to track or catch? What are they thinking of him?
Yeah.
Do they have a sense of whether he's getting close, whether he's not getting close? So interesting process. In this book, in The Girl in the Glass, I had no idea who the killer was until my fourth iteration of the book.
And when you write a full draft, you're using but I mean, like, you aren't starting by hand. You're writing.
No, I write on a laptop.
Yeah. You said you're using.
And I keep everything, all the earlier drafts of the book. I keep on. A computer is an absolutely wonderful device for a genre writer. I keep every word that I've written, every draft. I number them like Microsoft numbers its Windows, 1.0, 2.0, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's always there if I need to go back and reinsert something.
Wow. And so when do you I'm wondering when you do your writing. I mean, do you prefer to do it at night or in the morning, or what? Or where do you get it?
I sort of do my plotting. I only realized this recently, but I'll wake up at, whatever time, 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, and I will lie in bed for an hour thinking about the book.
Okay.
And I'll sort of plan the day's writing. I usually I sleep with an eye mask because I don't sleep very well after the sun comes up. And I'll lie there in darkness because of the eye mask, plotting what I'm going to write today and trying to figure out where I'm taking the story today and remembering what I wrote yesterday.
How much do you try to get done in a day?
It depends. In an action scene, I can write 1,000 words a day. In the procedural parts of it, I try to keep them livelier than they would be otherwise. So I work harder at putting some life into the dialogue during the standard procedures of questioning and looking up information. So I probably get no more than 500 or 600 words done in a day.
A lot of those
a good day I'll do 1,000
technical.
to 1,200. I'm sorry?
A lot of those are extremely technical pages. You were just saying 2,000 to 1,200 what? Or
between 500 and 1,200, depending. In an action scene, it goes quickly. I'm into the scene. I get excited. Like there is a scene, which because you've read it in this book, where Maggie is under fire from the bad guy, and
yes, I love
she chases him, and then he's shooting at her, and it all happens very quickly. And I wrote it very quickly, and I didn't change it much at all because I was into that scene. It was like I was riding shotgun with her. Yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite scenes is actually at a point about a quarter of the way through when they're all showing up at the discovery of the body, and you do this wonderful job of describing just the setting of the jogging trail and the jogger that Maggie is interviewing, and the police cars and the coroners coming and going. There's a vivid sense of place and of people doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing, and a familiarity with it that feels very believable. I have no idea if it's actually real to you or not. I don't know how you've done the research here, but it has that feel of being a real experience, and that
is pretty real. Before I started the first book, I contacted and eventually have become close friends with a retired detective in Portland who actually had McCabe's job on the Portland PD. And he's my go-to guy for details. What are they doing, in what order? I describe a scene to him. And we're in contact a lot, either through email or telephone calls, or occasionally we have lunch together. But he's been terribly helpful. And I have another person who is a forensic pathologist in South Carolina who's often very helpful. It's very useful. People are very willing and very gracious about giving information to people who write novels. I've never really been turned down when I cold call somebody and ask them, gee, can I ask you for some technical information on whatever it is that person is expert in. So it's fun, actually.
So you'll do that sometimes. You'll call somebody up and go, listen, I'm a novelist working on a thing. Can you explain to me like how to run a sporting arena, or how to work security at a mall, or whatever it is that you would need to find out, just to make up two examples for no reason. But that is very, very cool. How long is so? Going back to the process, you said like 500 to 1,200 words a day. You're plotting out your day in the morning. do you work at home, or do you work like off at a Starbucks, or where is your spot?
I do some work at home, depending on the weather, but mostly I'm about 5 minutes away from a university library. The University of Southern Maine is literally around the corner from our house, and their library, top floor of their library, has what they call the Great Reading Room, and it's a quiet room, and no phone calls are allowed in there, and no conversations are allowed in there, and it's very comfortable. And so I do most of my writing there.
I've known a lot of people to actually do that, to use local universities, local colleges, because usually they're just full of spots where it's ideal to like set up a computer and get your pages in. In the end, this book is, I don't know, I'm guessing 100,000 words. I couldn't quite tell by guessing, looking at the printout. You know how long?
I can tell you exactly. It's 93,500.
93,000. So if you're looking at, at finishing a draft of it in about 100 days, if you're working.
It doesn't happen that way for me because I do so much rewriting.
Oh, right, of course. And plus, in theory, well, you got rewriting. I mean your first draft. Or do you mean you go back and you do
I don't even have a first draft because I go over each chapter as I go along. My first draft is a finished book because I have all the way through. And I don't think many writers do this, but I'll write a chapter and then I'll rewrite that chapter and I'll write the next chapter. And then I'll go back to the chapter I wrote before and rewrite that to fit what comes after. And so it's a back and forth process for me. So when I get to the end of the book, it's pretty much a finished draft, a finished manuscript.
That really does.
My editor will have suggestions, and sometimes they're good suggestions, and sometimes they're suggestions I don't agree with. But so I do some rewriting, but I've never, in the 4 books, I have not had an editor really make major changes in the manuscript yet. And I've had editors, obviously HarperCollins, the major publisher, had Penguin in the UK, and it was the same thing there. They make suggestions, and sometimes they're good, but it hasn't been really major, any of it.
Wow,
which is fun.
Really fantastic. If you were like, let's say you're halfway through a book, and you were to decide, you know what, this security, the security chief that ends up kind of having a flirtation, who knows what it'll be, with Detective Maggie. The security chief character, let's say that you start out writing that character as a kind of a batty old lady security chief, some sort of concept like that. And then halfway through the book, you think, you know what, actually, if I change this into a guy, this might be an interesting love interest for the heterosexual Detective Maggie. Do you write forward, or do you stop right there and go back and change the earlier instances of the character?
I will stop right there if I make that kind of decision, which is a pretty dramatic change, of course. If I make that kind of decision, I'll stop right there and go back and change it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't go forward if that character is no longer the character you initially created.
I mean,
whatever they do from that point on will be different than.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's better to go back, change it, and live with your new version of the character.
That is fascinating. I mean, it's truly fascinating. You're not right and you're not wrong. This one is completely a matter of process, because there are others who would say the opposite, which is just. I'm sure. Just go forward and then go back and catch it on the flip side. I like what you're saying, though. It's really it's really interesting. What I was thinking about the other day is how this fits so well into a long tradition. The McCabe and Savage books do, into this long tradition of police procedurals. We were talking before taping about Ed McBain's 87th Precinct and stuff like that. And before we go, I just wanted to ask you about, in today's book environment, it feels very different and dangerous a little bit for books compared to, if you go back to like 1975, a man, after dinner, there's nothing on TV he wants to watch. He's very likely to kick back and maybe read a Ed McBain novel, maybe read a Dirty Harry tie-in, whatever. There's there's all these, men's adventure novels. There's this robust reading world, and I'm wondering, do you feel that reading is still in a strong place, or do you feel like we're more embattled than we were back then?
I think we're embattled, but I think reading is coming back. I'm really encouraged by the success of a lot of these young adult books. I mean, it's a very hot area right now. Obviously, Harry Potter may have been the first of them, but the Hunger Games and the vampire books and the rest of them encourage me enormously because young people, teenagers, are obviously getting great pleasure from the act of reading. And I think that's very encouraging. 20 years ago, I thought, when I was in the ad business, I can remember sitting in focus groups and having people read a brochure about a product or something like that. And the younger people in those focus groups would glance at the headlines, but really wouldn't go into the details of the copy. Whereas the older people, the 60-plus group, would really read because that's the way they've been trained. They were used to reading. But I think it's coming back now with the popularity of young adult books. And
those readers
James
will go
Patterson makes that point a lot, that he writes some young adult books now, and he tries very hard to appeal to the 15, 16, 17-year-old group, and seems to be doing it with some success.
Well, what I was thinking was, when you think about it, that's totally true, but also if the young adult audience is growing, then that audience, some of them will keep reading YA books well into maturity. And I know a lot of 40-year-olds who love young adult books, because in the end,
absolutely.
It's just a label, and it just means what it means. But there are plenty of those people who, if we're seeing a growth in reading, they're going to keep reading, even if they switch over into other genres, detective thrillers and stuff like that.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I've always been a reader. I'm sure you have always been a reader.
Yeah.
I know my audience is pretty much older female dominated. Probably 60% of my readers, maybe even more, are women over 50.
You hear from them? Do they ever write to you?
This is anecdotal because I get a lot of emails and I get a lot of Facebook friend requests from readers. And that's my impression, that it's largely women, with their hair going gray.
It's so funny because that is not a world, when you think about it, let's say you had started writing these books in 1987 or something.
Yeah.
It would be a different world. You would put the book out, but you wouldn't, unless somebody took the time to put a stamp on a letter they wrote to HarperCollins, you would never know, what they were thinking. Whereas now there's this instant feedback. If somebody has anything to tell you about your book, they can write it on Amazon, they can write it on Goodreads, they can send you an email, they can send you something on Facebook.
Oh, you get all kinds of feedback from readers. It's really astonishing. I mean, when my first book, The Cutting, I had a 60-year-old female who was McCabe's daughter's babysitter when he was out solving murders. And I had this character, as I described it in the manuscript, riding a Harley Davidson. I got an email from an ex-cop who lived in Wilmington, North Carolina. He said, I love the book. You got all the police procedural stuff exactly right, but I've got one bone to pick with you. Nobody rides a Harley. He said, yeah. I mean, nobody drives a Harley. You ride a Harley.
You ride it.
And you admit, right. I had this woman driving a Harley, and he took great exception with that. Emailed me instantly when he was reading the book and said,
the great thing is,
drive a Harley. What's that?
You can, now in the wondrous age of I don't know even know what you'd call this, interactivity, you can make that fix. So if you ever put out a new edition, you can just swap out the word.
Absolutely.
Really
I'm not sure I ever did, actually.
Tell me, so just to wrap up, the new book is The Girl in the Glass. I think it's available now on Kindle, but it'll be out on paperback in October. That's correct, isn't it?
In October, that's right. October 6th, it comes out as a paperback.
Oh, cool. I'm going to make sure. I have an early reader's copy, but I want to make sure that I get the paperback when it comes out. Can you tell people where to, I guess the most important thing is go get the Kindle book. It's on Amazon, and it's called The Girl.
On Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble for Nook, it's on iBooks, all the rest of it. So.
All right, very good. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and so forth. And do you have a website URL that you want to tell us about?
I do. I have a website, which is jameshaymenthrillers.com.
Very cool. That's Hayman is how you spell Hayman.
Hayman. I also have a Facebook, James Hayman Thrillers, which probably has more news in it than the website does because it's a little bit more instantaneous to update than the website is. So if people want to find out, if I'm, giving a reading somewhere or something like that, probably the first place to look is Facebook/James Hayman Thrillers.
Outstanding. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm very thankful that you would spend time with us, and especially to talk about process and how you're putting these books together. Congratulations on the new book, and I hope it does really well. And I enjoyed it very much. It really kept me enthralled. So have a fantastic evening.
It was fun chatting.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And everybody, we will see you very soon. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.